Okay, he's back. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear you.
All right. As you deduced. So what are some specific disagreements that we would have?
I don't know. You wanted to come debate?
Yeah, so you generally seem to have a fairly dismissive stance towards the liberal international order, right?
I do not believe in its long-term survivability.
Do you think that current attempts to engage with international institutions are generally a good thing or a bad thing?
I think they are vain. They are not going to lead to the survival of the global unipolar American world order.
Okay, so why do you think that the liberal international order is going to collapse?
Well, I'll answer your question by answering you a question. Which countries comprise the international liberal world order?
Well, I don't. I think that the liberal international order refers more to an edifice based around cooperation than a
Which
list
are
of
the
countries.
countries that comprise the backbone of that edifice?
I mean, I think that the United States is one important backbone of the liberal international order. Many of the countries in Europe, I think China is increasingly attempting to integrate itself into the liberal international order, although it's also attempting to work against many of the
I
elements of the
don't.
liberal international.
That's really strange. So you think China's trying to integrate into the liberal world order?
I mean, to some degree, they're also trying to undermine it in ways.
Well,
So I
how are
mean,
they trying to integrate into it? That was interesting.
I guess China's not integrating into it so much as they are attempting to establish their own forms of cooperative institutions.
So,
Um,
what is the most common denominator of the liberal international order, civilizationally and culturally?
um, I don't know. I mean, that question seems like a leading question where you're hoping for a specific answer. Like what?
Do I have to hope in good faith? If you were to answer it honestly, do I have to hope for it, or is it pretty self-evident what the answer is?
I mean, I don't think it's evident what the answer is. Maybe I'm just
Really?
missing something obvious, but
Oh, that's interesting. So, it's not
wait, but
self-evident as to the answer of what does the underlying with few, and but by few I mean like maybe 1 to 4, you know, maybe 1 to 4 exceptions at most, and even those are not really exceptions. For example, people will try to say that Japan is part of the liberal world order, but is that true when Japan's ruling party has been in power since the 50s, has never been overthrown in an election? And people might say that South Korea is part of the liberal world order, but is that really true when South Korea was a dictatorship for most of the country's existence and was only able to industrialize because of very illiberal industrial policies that many of which have been retained to this day? And South Korea may have appear like a kind of liberal democracy, but in reality, it's not. There's not really free speech or things like that. It's just
yeah.
allied with
So
America. So I think there is one underlying cultural and civilizational denominator to the liberal world order. Do I have to say it or is it clear?
I mean, is it like being Western? Is it
That's
being in
precisely it. It's being Western European.
okay, but this kind of brings around to the original question that you didn't answer, which was why do
Sure.
you predict the imminent collapse of the liberal world order?
What percentage of the globe's population do you think are part of Western European civilization?
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but not that much.
It's not. It's no more than 10% at
Okay,
most. At most.
sure, but I mean, do you think that there's some impossibility of integrating other countries into the international order?
I do think it's impossible. I think the rest of the world's people. I think not only is the rest of the world's population not capable of assimilating into liberal democracy, I think even the liberal democratic countries are shown to be in contradiction with his dream of liberal democracy, as we're seeing with the breakdown of the political and civil edifice of the United States and the growing turmoils of Europe. Western
Wait,
Europe itself.
what breakdown of the edifice of the United States are you referring to?
The fact that half of the country doesn't even recognize the president, for example.
Yeah, I mean that, but do you predict some imminent collapse of the United States? It's obviously a bad thing and it undermines U.S. legitimacy. But I mean, do you think
If
that
I was
there?
a betting man, I would not bet on the long term sustainability of the American political system
So,
in
what
the
do you think
next.
will happen to the American political system?
I think some kind of political crisis will happen that will not be able to be resolved with the current institutions in place.
Can you give an example of a type of political crisis that would be unresolvable with current institutions?
Anything ranging from a civil war to a coup to a constitutional crisis to a crisis of recognizing legitimacy of elections, a breakdown of unity on state and federal lines between different local governments. There's all
Okay,
sorts of things.
so I
City
mean,
governments entering into contradiction with state and federal. There's a lot of things that can
well,
happen.
wait. I mean that is a thing that happens, but it's usually resolved in court. Like sometimes state and federal
Thus
laws can.
far, yes, but I think at a certain point, the legitimacy of the courts will be called into question, and
Uh,
the courts will
why?
no longer be a viable. I mean, the courts have already been so politicized. I mean, this is a trend that began maybe in the time around or before the 1930s, but the courts have become so politicized
I mean
that their legitimacy hangs on a delicate balance of maintaining the veneer of some kind of fairness and neutrality between different judges. Like, the conservative judges will have representation and the liberal ones will have representation. So, this is basically what's going on with the courts.
I mean, I think that the courts have been politicized for a long time. If I remember correctly, I think William Howard Taft, after he stopped being the president, sat on the Supreme Court. Polarization is not a new phenomenon. And if there was going to be some imminent collapse
But
as a
the
result of
courts were
court
specifically
illegitimacy, then it would have already happened as a result of Trump's many legal challenges being shot down.
first of all, let's go one at a time. The reason I'm saying the courts were politicized is actually because, specifically in the 30s, is because FDR had to resort to court packing to um, basically fill the court with judges that he knew would uphold the constitutionality of his New Deal and other programs. But had he not done that, the conservative judiciary would have never allowed it to be possible. And ever since then, the veneer of the judiciary as this like politically neutral party is. I mean, Pat Taft may have served as on the judge, whatever, after he was president, but the real politicization of the courts happened around that time
I
of the New
mean,
Deal.
well, I don't know that. I mean, imagine if like Obama was put on the Supreme Court. That would be a pretty unprecedented
But
policy.
it was a different time and circumstance in which statesmen maintained this kind of stoic veneer of allegiance to the kind of neutrality of the Americas, the republic institutions stuff. By the time the Obama era is here, that is all gone.
I mean, it seems like all of the stresses that American democracy has been under, with Trump challenging the legitimacy of the election, with the increasing politicization of the judiciary, demonstrate the resiliency of the American system. Why do you predict
Why do you
imminent
think that
collapse against
test?
all of?
Yeah, why do you think it's over?
Well, I didn't say it's over. I said that the fact that there has not been an imminent collapse demonstrates the resiliency of the American system.
Why would the collapse have to be imminent? Why couldn't it simmer slowly and take hold and take root more slowly than you could have expected? I mean, you do realize this is not a united country. Half of the country still does not accept Biden as president.
Right, and I think that the fact that the country has not collapsed, that there has not been a breakdown in the United
Okay,
States,
so
demonstrates.
let me walk you through this. What you're saying, from my perspective, what you're saying is like we're basically on a sinking ship, and the fact that the ship has not sunk attests to the strength of this ship. Even if that's true, the ship is still sinking. So, are you sure the ship is not going to sink? Well, the water's filling up to the brim.
Well, I think a better analogy would be if it were an aircraft and it had just survived 5 nuclear bombs that were dropped directly on the ship, we would probably predict that it was unlikely to sink, given that the fact that it's so resilient that it's been able to resist the strength of the current assault on
But how
democracy.
how do you know the worst is past by that same analogy? Like why do you think the worst is past us? I don't think the
Well, I
worst
don't,
is past us. I think the real tensions, the real contradiction is going to heat up when the midterms and the next election come around. That's my view.
okay, what do you mean by the real contradictions? Walk me through how materially that would manifest.
Well, I think you need to realize that the Trump movement is well and alive. Trump is still a kind of shadow president for 50% of people in America.
Yeah,
And
so
what they are banking on is, first of all, winning the midterms so that Trump will consolidate his base and consolidate the foundation for his next plans for presidency, whatever those happen to be, whether he wants to run or he wants one of his kids to run or something. And then when Trump runs, it's going to heighten America's political antagonisms to such an extent that I don't think it's going to
okay,
weather
so
them.
so what do you predict the end result of that will be? Do you think there will be like a civil war as a result of
What we are witnessing is a contradiction between the founding liberal institutions that hold together so called American democracy and the actual site of the political conflicts and political struggles. It seems
what's
like.
what's the definition of a contradiction that you're using?
Are you joking right now?
I'm not joking. I generally take a contradiction to
An
be
irresolvable conflict. How about we just go
okay,
with that? Like,
sure.
what do you mean a definition of a contradiction? Like,
Well,
why do I have to qualify the meaning of the word contradiction? Like, there is
well,
a
because I think
contradiction, right?
I find
There's an
I find
irresolvable deadlock.
yeah. So well, okay. I think that the definition that you're using is fine. I find people often use contradictions in ways that are kind of vague and amorphous. But I mean, so it seems like based on the election betting odds, the like Democrats and Republicans are both about equally likely to maintain the House. But I mean, what is the breaking point? So like, there's the midterms. Some
I don't
Republicans
know
still.
exactly what the breaking point is going to be, but I have no reason to think the breaking point necessarily would have had to been the recent election. I mean, the recent election alone was like huge, right? That was a really big. A lot of people thought that was going to be a breaking point, right? And I just think the idea that this is the worst to come and oh, we weathered the big storm, the big test. I don't see how that's the case because like if anything, the antagonisms and contradictions are now simmering and heating up under the surface in such a drastic and radical way. I mean, it suffices to only look at how
Okay.
I bet you to this day, if you turn on CNN, you're still gonna see people talk about like this issue of domestic terrorism and domestic extremism that threatens our democracy. They were talking about that months after the January 6th event, to the extent that I remember. And it's like this is still a problem, and the problem didn't go away. You know,
Okay.
the problem of the fact that Americans, whether they're on the liberal side or the conservative side, and this is true, and let's be fair because it's true that when Trump was elected in 2016, the left, by and part, did not accept the results. They did everything in their power to find ways and excuses to impeach Trump or mount legal cases against him, to go out on the streets and protest and go crazy and go wild.
So
So it's on both sides. Both sides are placing their political allegiances and loyalties to ideologies over the stoic and neutral veneer of the sanctity of America's founding institutions of the republic. So this is a
wait, I
contradiction. I
agree
don't
with that,
see.
but I mean, so there is some amount of existing conflict and polarization building up. Why does that mean that the degree to which the conflict and polarization builds up will be sufficient to trigger a crisis that demolishes American democracy when it survived hundreds of years and
because
enormous numbers of stress tests?
because this contradiction is in the context of a global order and a world in transition, a world in which illiberal and non-liberal forms of politics and statehood are outmoding the liberal kind.
Wait, so okay, but how does that make it so that I mean, well, one, there have been battles between liberal and illiberal states before. For example, the Cold War, and
Yeah, but
there.
it was a very naive assumption on part of liberals that the Cold War ended and that it was over. Liberal democracy won. This is what Francis Fukuyama thought.
Yeah, okay,
It's not
I
true.
mean,
It's patently not true.
yeah, but
The
sure.
first there
Look,
was many
pause.
signs that
That's not what I said.
I know, but that
But
wasn't a stress test because it's not over. That conflict is still
well,
it's
okay,
still
but
here.
their Cold War was certainly at a greater intent. There was certainly greater intensity of a conflict between liberal and illiberal states.
Greater no no
There's not
no
a collapse of
no
U.S.
omni.
democracy.
There was a greater apparent intensity from the Western perspective. Even after
Okay,
the Cold War ended, illiberal forces prevailed all over the world.
okay,
They may not have been communist, but they were certainly illiberal.
so is your claim that the conflicts now are greater than they were during the Cold War?
The conflict in question being the demise of the liberal world order, the demise
Well,
of the
the
liberal.
conflict between liberal and illiberal
I
states.
think no. I think I don't think there's really a conflict anymore. I think what's happening is we are reaching the decisive breaking point of both global liberalism as well as the American empire, and it is at the hour of its
Okay,
dusk. We have reached the decisive point, the
okay,
final point.
what leads you to that conclusion?
I just gave you a host of reasons.
Well, wait, no, you gave me like okay, but
I
wait,
told you about how
which of those
90% of the
reasons do you
world,
think are unique to the present?
because non-liberal and non-European powers, which are very economically successful, or at least sufficiently economically successful to mount a real alternative, no longer can the excuse be made that they're just lesser developed. Is basically the point. There's a multipolar world order that is emerging, where Europe and America are no longer the center. And then there's also the internal political contradictions within the liberal countries themselves.
Okay, let's talk about some of those contradictions within liberal countries. So
Yeah.
you're a communist, right?
Okay.
Okay, so what would be your solution to, for
I
example,
don't
the
think there's a
calculation?
solution. I think the contradiction must develop and
Well,
must
wait,
play out.
my my question was, what's your solution to the calculation problem, for example?
Do you want to talk about the contradictions or do you want to talk about the calculation problem?
I want to talk about the calculation problem.
Okay, well, we're moving on to the next subject, which is about the calculation problem now. Um, Actually, believe it or not, there's basically a few responses to the calculation problem that are prevalent. The first one is that whatever problem the calculation problem was trying to describe, was addressed in the form of the rise of computers and the computational techniques and forms of I don't know what to call them production, but that basically computers solve this problem. And this is
Wait,
Paul's.
how do computers solve the calculation
Yeah, I
problem?
will point you to the works of Paul Cockshott. He's a computer scientist, and his followers are the ones who basically have this response by
What?
calculating inputs and according outputs of production by the use of
Okay,
computer calculations.
how do we decide what things to produce? Like, what do we plug into the computers to decide the things that should be produced?
I think his basic idea is that inputs by consumers in the form of what they prefer are measured by the computers, and basically the system modulates the outputs of production accordingly, something like
Wait,
that.
okay, inputs are measured by well, okay, but the amount that consumers consume will be dependent on price, right?
Um,
So
like
how are prices
supply and
determined?
demand, basically, right?
Yeah, so sure. So supply and demand
Paul,
is a
yeah,
market-based idea. So how, absent a market, do you figure out how much of the stuff to produce?
I think Paul operates with the kind of labor voucher idea at first, and that after the labor voucher idea, basically, you won't have to deal with this kind of supply and demand.
Okay, so how would a labor voucher work? People would be subsidized based on how
I
much
actually
labor
don't
they
know the
do.
details of how he describes it. I'm just trying to introduce you to that perspective, that there is a huge school of thought that's very popular among Marxists. They're the followers of Paul Cockshott, and he's wrote many books on this. And he goes into huge, like everything you're talking about, he talks about.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure. So, but I mean, so if you don't have enough information to supply answers to, for example, the calculation problem, why do
yeah.
you trust that there is an answer to the calculation problem that's satisfactory?
Because I actually don't think that Cockshott's is the like you don't have to know about his like specific utopian or compute, maybe not utopian, he might not like that, but his computer idea. I think the calculation problem was always wrong, basically. It was always wrong, even before computers were invented.
Well, okay, so then what's your solution to it if it's wrong?
I don't think there's a problem requires a solution.
Okay, so how under your system do we decide how much of stuff to produce and allocate resources effectively?
It's a bizarre question because that would depend on the time and circumstance of and of what we're dealing with. Like
Well, I mean, in
how should
any
I
like,
know?
okay, well, okay, let's say people like take a small village of 100 people.
Yeah.
Wait, so would there be a market where they can like if they're in their little community, there be a market where they can trade with outside communities under your system?
What does that have to do with what you're asking?
Well, I'll explain. Just answer the question.
Hypothetically, we're talking about a post-market
Okay,
system.
so then how would so okay, so like for example, there are places where they do not have the ability to grow food very well. So how do they allocate resources and how do we get food there without a market
By there, what do you mean?
to the places that cannot adequately grow
By
food?
places, what do you mean? Do you mean what territory are you trying to describe? Are you trying to describe a village of 100 people, a country, a
Yeah, sure.
province?
Let's say a village of 100 people.
Yeah, I don't actually think a village of 100 people would comprise an economic unit in the first place.
Okay, but how do we get food to them, regardless of whether they
How
comprise an
what
economic
would be the
unit?
means of transporting the food to them?
Yeah, like how do we decide what like
Probably with whatever means of transportation at whatever time is
okay,
possible.
who decides how much food goes there? What type of food?
The
How, like,
needs are decided first on the basis of what is necessary for their subsistence in a state of industrialization, like in the USSR, and then from there, preferences and you know
well, wait,
plays
okay,
into a
so
factor.
they all get food that enough food that's necessary for subsistence.
Yeah, obviously they have to
Okay,
survive.
what food would they get that's necessary for subsistence? And how do we
I
decide?
mean, it's a stupid question because all of these things you're asking me are dependent on like local culture and the food consumption traditions, and it's like, what
Well, I
are
mean,
you actually
but
asking me? Like, I
but
don't
I
know,
mean the
bananas and
question.
oranges and bananas and apples and
Okay, so wait, would
McDonald's hamburger.
everyone?
Like, what do you want me
Okay,
to say? I don't know what you're
oh,
asking.
no, I mean, I don't think that there's a good way of allocating goods under a
Sure, I
non-capitalist
know
system.
that, but you haven't demonstrated that by asking me the
Well,
question of what food should they get, and it's like I don't know
well,
what food they
okay,
would
but I
get.
mean, the thing is that there's no solution even in principle because the only adequate way of allocating resources is based on principles of supply and demand. If the price goes up as a result of there being less stuff, then that signals that there's a shortage and people have an incentive to conserve whatever resources
Yeah,
price goes up,
the
which is
argument you're
how,
making is
which is how
tautological. Yeah, it's a tautological argument. Do you know what that means?
I do. A
Yeah,
tautological
it's a
argument is
form of circular reasoning. What you're saying.
well, okay, so if it's a form of circular reasoning, then which part of the argument do you think is question begging and disagree with?
You're saying that the only form of allocating resources is a market because
Well, give
markets
me
are the
another
only way to
form.
allocate resources.
Well, no, I mean, I think that there was economic theory. So I've given you an account of how markets are able to do this adequately. I don't think that your system is able to
No,
do it
markets
adequately.
can't do this. What? First of all, the reason what you're saying is tautological is because the way you're describing markets, which is how the Austrians describe them, by the way, is actually, and this is why Austrian economists are secretly socialist, is because you're describing markets as an organ of planning. You're describing markets as an organ, as a tool by governments to ensure.
No.
Yes, you are. You're describing markets as a tool to satisfy the needs and demands of a
Well,
population.
yeah,
But actually,
the markets
a
work
market,
not run by government. Markets work
they
based
don't
on
have
the
to be run by
efficient price
government.
signals
They
sent by the market.
shut up. They don't have to be run by the government directly, but you're describing them in such a way that they serve the political goal of satisfying the needs of a population. But actually, markets do not have any inherent disposition to allocate resources in a way that benefits the welfare of any given population whatsoever. That's
Well, I
not what
think that
a market is just a site of exchange. So what you're saying is tautological. If we presuppose that the form of private property remains and the basically capitalism exists, then of course markets are the only way. But the whole point is that it's kind of
okay, but
circular reasoning.
sure. So, okay, under a market system, what happens is if there's less of a resource, then the price of that resource goes up. And so then there's an incentive to conserve it and to not use it unnecessarily because the price went up. How would that affect function under your ideal system?
Calculating the quantity of resource. First of all, two things. There's a two-pronged problem with what you're saying. The first one is scarcity economics, right? This idea that markets and prices are actually determined by scarcity is completely fake and false.
Well,
Second,
markets are determined by both supply and demand.
yeah, sure, but the whole
So
thing
it's,
about scarcity is
well,
basically
no,
not
it's
true.
not just scarcity.
It's costs of production are when you're getting to the point of real scarcity, the economy doesn't actually really have a good way of measuring that. What the economy is respondent to is dealing with different costs of production.
well, wait,
And
when a resource is more scarce, the price goes up, so people use less of it. I mean, do you disagree with that? And if so, why?
there is rarely a situation in which the scarcity of resources is relevant to an economic.
That is absolutely not true.
Okay, what's an example?
Any good in a market will have its price be determined by the demand curve. The demand curve is largely determined by the scarcity of the resource. And
No, it's
so,
not. No, it's not.
wait, what do you think goes into the demand curve?
What do you mean by
It,
demand curve, first of all?
wait, you don't know what a demand? So, okay.
No, I
So
forgot.
in
Educate
okay,
me.
Okay, so in economics, we have the demand curve, which determines how much consumers demand of. Wait, oh, sorry, I was being stupid. It was the supply curve. But
That's what
anyways,
I that's what I was trying to say. Like, no, the demand
okay,
curve is
yeah,
not dependent on. So
yeah,
supply
sure.
curve. Yeah, but I'm trying to say that supply curves are much actually more determined by costs of production, not actual scarcity of resources.
Well, okay, scarcity of resources
Is
is
rarely
generally a
don't
question.
talk to me about scarcity of resources when we talk about the economy. It's not
Well,
relevant.
scarcity of resources is a question at a given level, like at a given price, right? So
The,
it
the,
might be the
the,
case.
the scarcity of resources is a constant factor across the entire history of mankind. The costs of production are what change. Okay, so let's just move on from there. Second of
Right,
all,
we can produce more things, and there's an incentive to
okay,
produce more
it's costs
things.
of
The
production.
price
Okay,
goes
we got
up,
it. Costs
and
of
there's
production go down. Second,
well, yeah, cost of production. Yeah, sure. I mean, cost of
okay,
production determines what the supply of it is.
sure, that's what I was trying to say. The second issue with your question, which was, wait, what did you say at first? We
Okay,
got bogged
so
down in this, needlessly bogged down in this first prong that I forgot the second
yeah,
prong.
so my question, which still has not been answered, is under a market system, if there's less of something, then the price of it will go up. If the price of it goes up, people have an incentive to use less of it. How does your system make it so that people have
Oh
an
yeah, yeah.
incentive to use?
The second prong is that hypothetically, some kind of even in a utopian, just something I can imagine in my ass, the The costs of production can be measured in many different ways. They can be measured in terms of the amount of resources they consume. They can be measured in terms of the energy costs. They can be measured in terms of labor. I don't really see why you would have to. I don't
Wait,
see
okay,
why I
so
don't see why prices are the only way to measure the given costs of production in an economy.
so that explains on the supply end, and I think there are problems with that. But on the demand
Let's
end,
go to the
how do you
problems
make
first.
it?
Before we get into demand, let's go to the problems.
What? Well,
Let's
no, I
just,
mean,
yeah,
uh,
go to the problems.
well, okay. Wait, sorry. Repeat what you just said.
Yeah, there are other ways to calculate the given efficiency or resource intensity or costs of production beyond prices. You can measure them actually in terms of their objective, empirical, and scientific
Wait,
costs.
what is their objective, empirical, and scientific cost?
Like how much energy it consumes, for example.
Well, okay, but it'll require labor, and that requires determining how valuable labor is, right?
Yeah, labor is also a factor, obviously. That's why Hawkshot and
Okay,
those other
so
people talk about
okay,
labor tokens and labor vouchers.
okay, so the government decides like how much. So the government would top down decide how much a given product costs to produce.
I
Is
think they
that
would measure it somehow.
well? Okay, so how would they measure it?
They would measure it in terms of the actual empirical cost of production
Well, that's what they're trying to measure, but how do they measure the actual empirical costs of production?
through its labor value, or not value, but its labor content. Its labor content, labor time plus resources plus energy plus yeah, the things like
Okay,
that.
but how does that decide the value of those things?
It doesn't have to.
Well, you said that how when determining the value of the good, it looks at the value of those other things and
Why do they
adds them.
have to have value?
Well, that's what you said. You said that when they're deciding
I
how
said
much.
labor values, and then I said I misspoke. I don't mean value. That's what I said.
Okay, wait. So then we're back to the original question of how do they decide how much of the stuff to produce? You just said they look at the value of a
based
bunch
on
of
the needs
inputs.
of the society. I don't know like what you're asking. Like based on the needs of
How
society.
do how do so the needs of society?
You know, the saying in communism is from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Do you understand what this means? It means the needs of society plus the ability,
Okay,
the
how do we
constraints and the
decide?
ability to
Yeah, how
fulfill
do
that.
so what are the needs of society?
I don't know what society you're talking about.
No, I
What do
mean,
you
okay,
mean?
so the needs of society.
Yeah,
So I mean, different people need different things,
true.
and there's the only efficient way to aggregate this, unless you can give a better method, which you have not, is by making it so that there's a price system. People generally will pay quite a lot of money for the things that they need, and so
No,
having a
you can
system.
actually produce according to need itself.
Okay, how do you decide what people need?
We're back to square one.
Yeah,
Through
because you didn't answer.
you can decide what people need through inputs of what they need.
Okay, how do you decide what the inputs of what they need are?
They can somehow communicate what they need.
Okay, so everyone communicates what they need. So people like describe
And
and think.
also based on precedent.
Okay, so why wouldn't people
Precedent
have an
patterns of
incentive
consumption
that
as
they
well.
need a lot of things that they
There's
don't?
also
In fact?
precedent patterns of consumption.
Okay, so you look at past consumption. Okay, so well, but that won't. But that won't determine what people need, right? Because people consume things that they don't need sometimes, right?
Okay. Well,
Okay,
there's different levels of planning, and this was true in the USSR. There is the primary sphere of production, there's the sphere of production that is necessary for the survival and subsistence of the population, and then surpluses are where there's excess, and with those excesses, there's room for arbitrariness and kind of preferences and things like that. But I think there's a big fallacy in your argument to begin with. What you're saying is that right here and now in this Discord call, since you have described some vague description of how markets work, you have put forward how something works. If I don't go into detail about how an alternative, there is no alternative.
Well,
That
no,
is a
so
complete fallacy. That's not true.
yeah,
You
so
don't know if there's an alternative or not because you're just
look,
not.
I mean, it's
You're not
it's
informed. You're not informed enough about what critics of markets say.
Well, I think I'm somewhat informed, and
Have you read Paul Cockshot's books?
I have not. No.
You've never even heard of who he was, and that's one of the biggest critics
Right.
of markets there is around today.
Well, okay, so the general consensus among both economists and historians is that markets are the best, if not the only efficient way of aggregating information.
Okay, but I don't actually care what their consensus is when you make a claim like there is no other solution until you, Haas, go into detail about how it would work. That is just a complete fallacy.
Look, all that I'm saying is that you don't have the answers, and the majority of people who have studied the issue agree that there are no answers, that there's no solution. So,
but actually, that's another logical fallacy you're committing. Just because the majority of people came to a conclusion doesn't mean that it suffices to satisfy the criterion of its validity, of whether it's true or not.
So that's
you actually have to engage in the independent and critical use of reason to judge.
You just said that you're not willing to do that because you're not informed enough about how it works, but then implored me to read Paul Cockshot's books, right? So what I'm saying.
So wait, what is hypocritical about what I just said?
Well, I didn't say it was hypocritical.
Or how is it inconsistent with the argument I just forwarded?
Well, all that I was saying was that just if you're going to point to other people who disagree with my position, who I haven't read, say that that's sufficient grounds for discounting my position, such that you don't actually have to provide.
I'm actually not saying I'm not saying it discounts your position.
And I think that the fact that the majority of people who have studied the issue have disagreed with your position is good evidence against your position.
It's not even a smidgen of evidence.
Okay, so let's say 95% of scientists think something.
That would require some kind of explanation, but it still doesn't suffice to constitute evidence of the validity of one position or the other.
Wait, you don't think that the fact that the consensus among people who have studied the issues is overwhelming?
No, I think
you don't think that that's evidence?
No, I think institutions and the people you're talking about are a bunch of lazy, good for nothing, uncreative pencil pushers, and I don't actually give a fuck what they have to think about anything. Well, okay. Not only in the sphere of economics, but also in the sphere of history, philosophy, art, and basically every other sphere of human thought. Please don't appeal to authority to me because I don't care what they say. I don't care.
Well, okay. Do you tend to believe conspiracy theories?
Are you familiar with the work of psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan?
I am very familiar.
Good.
I think that.
So when you refer to what they are saying, Lacan actually has a word for this. It's called the big other with a capital O. It's the big other. So a subject will often defer to some kind of imaginary big other as an excuse to not engage in the sober and critical and independent use of reason themselves.
Well, okay, I take a few things. One, I think that psychoanalysis is bullshit and is not able to make reliable predictions.
But it's still a pretty accurate description of the psychological relationship you have to what the majority of economists are saying. I don't care.
What predictions does it make that are accurate? What predictions does it make?
Why does it have to make predictions?
Okay, so the way that we distinguish bullshit from not bullshit is we look at if per theory can make predictions that turn out to be correct.
Who's we? All the Anglo dumbasses like you? No, not we.
No. Okay, so what is your criterion for determining if theory is bullshit if it can't make predictions, if it's unfalsifiable?
I actually focus on what people are trying to mean and trying to say and trying to.
Okay,
I focus on what people are trying to make intelligible and whether they are making.
I don't deny that.
Whether people shut up. Whether people are making something intelligible that was not before intelligible. In terms of what the world for human meaning of human.
Well,
meaning.
I don't deny that Lacan was trying to make something intelligible. I just think that the thing that he concluded.
Oh god, now we're gonna
100%.
debate about Lacan. I knew I shouldn't. We shouldn't have mentioned
I mean,
him.
I'm somewhat informed about psychoanalysis,
Are you?
and yeah,
Okay.
and I generally take it to be
Okay.
bullshit.
Lacan does not care what science people think, and he's not trying to
Well,
make
yeah,
it
and
a
the
legitimate.
soy
He's not trying to be
scientist.
popular on Reddit. He didn't care about that. Okay.
Well, okay, he also didn't. I
Yeah,
mean,
Allah.
okay,
This is what happens when you mention Lacan in front of a Redditor. They literally have to veer it into a discussion about the philosophy of science and the criterion of whether they should entertain the wealth and treasure of
well,
mankind.
I don't use
So
that.
all of human history was just dumb bullshit until Anglo-Saxon modernity. That's the conclusion we draw, basically.
No, I don't think that all of
That's
human
basically the
history.
conclusion we draw because
That
there is
is
literally no way
absolutely
there is no
not
way
true.
to actually make sense of the forms of meaning that human beings actually use to convey what they considered meaningful and real without resorting to things that step beyond the bounds of what you consider meaningful as an Anglo-Saxon dogmatic science guy.
Well, I mean, if you can provide an account of how it is meaningful and how it can
They
be
literally Freudian Lacanians. They literally do that. They literally describe They
yeah,
describe things like the whole sphere of continental philosophy does that. They engage with and
I think continental philosophy is largely BS.
yeah, I know you call it BS, and you basically describe everything that's outside of the Anglo box as BS. I mean, I get that. It's your cope.
Well, no, I mean, I think
It's your
that,
cope.
like,
It's
for
your so-called
example,
cope, right? It's fashionable
well, no,
nonsense. It's nonsense. It's bullshit. We get it.
well,
You're
no,
not smart enough to get it, so you have to call it bullshit.
well, no, I'm actually,
That's actually how
I,
colonialists. That's actually how
I'm,
colonialists treated things they didn't understand.
I'm
They went
actually
into other
pretty
corners of the
well
world,
read about
and they didn't
continental
understand. They
philosophy.
didn't understand all of these religions and philosophies and practices. So they're like, "Oh, this is just dumb, meaningless, primitive bullshit." And that's
Well,
basic, and they were wrong, basically. So that's pretty much the
okay,
attitude and
so
mentality you're describing now.
like what about, for example, the SoCal hoax or the SoCal squared hoax or Carnap's deductive demonstration that Heidegger was wrong about that
Carnap didn't
Heidegger was
describe
denying.
anything except the conflation of truth with certainty, which is an elementary, middle school error in philosophy.
I don't think that that's an
I
accurate
don't
reading
care
of
what you
Carnap's
think.
period, but
Carnap
okay.
did not
Wait,
actually
so
levy. Carnap did not actually levy a
how would
critique against Heidegger.
how would you explain the examples like the SoCal hoax, for example?
Okay, you mentioned the SoCal hoax. Thanks. The SoCal hoax demonstrated nothing.
Well, okay, so then
Demonstrated nothing. You want to know why? Because
I do want to know
bullshit
why.
pranks have actually made their way into peer-reviewed empirical science studies as well.
Which
Not just.
ones?
You want me to look it up for you now?
Well, no. So I'm familiar with cases, and generally they've been used.
Yeah, the SoCal hoax is a complete fraud because
no,
it's an issue
no,
with
no,
institutional peer review in general,
it's
not
not.
anything
It's not
even
true.
specific.
That's not true. For
Yes, it
example,
is. It literally is.
okay,
There was
you're
literally a response to the SoCal hoax of these humanity guys pranking scientists dealing with STEM shit, and it worked. So
yeah,
no, the
and
SoCal hoax doesn't prove anything.
yeah, no, and that was a test of a specific field that the person who did that hoax in did not think was reliable, and then they did tests and determined that it was not reliable, and it published bullshit. There are other fields, for
What are you
example,
talking?
like
Wait. Before you go further, what did you just say?
okay, so the case that you are referencing of there being a hoax done on some on like a biology
It's happened
journal,
multiple times,
it
not
was
just
a
once.
specific unreliable biology journal which they were attempting to
Okay, so
demonstrate
why does the
anything.
journal that SoCal was pranking stand for the whole history of continental thinking?
Well, because with the SoCal squared hoax, it was done in a variety of different journals.
So
in a
why does
variety of different
why does that speak for the credibility of all continental thinking in general?
Well, I don't think it does, but I think it serves as quite strong evidence. If they routinely publish bullshit, it serves as quite
No,
strong evidence for
it's
that.
actually the fact that they routinely publish things that they assume with good faith means something, but themselves don't really, really read and
Well, okay,
engage with
so
themselves.
if they routinely publish word salads that they take on faith,
No. You misquoted me. I didn't say they routinely publish word salads. I said they probably routinely publish things that they don't allocate the time and intensity to try and understand. That's different from saying it is imminently word salad.
Well, okay, I think that there are also a large...
Listen, Omni, let me tell you something. Between the British Isles and continental Europe, there's the English Channel, right? Yeah. So your English Channel is when you draw a line and say, everything you say is word salad, meaningless bullshit. That's where we, continental people, say, fuck you, suck my cock, I don't care what you think, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And you can stay on your Cope Island and think what you want and basically have this primitive view of the world.
Well, no, I think a hallmark of continental philosophy is that they don't say things like, fuck you, suck my cock. Instead, they hide behind these words.
No, they don't. You literally don't know anything about continental. You don't know anything about... No, you fucking don't. You only know about fucking American humanities importation of continental philosophy. You don't actually realize that in continental Europe, they literally don't care about you.
I can cite you a plethora of papers that are continental philosophy that I've read.
Which ones?
Okay, so one example is it was by Heraclius Ionitis, I believe.
Which country?
Which country? I don't remember what country.
Was it English speaking?
I don't remember what country he's in.
So why is that an example against me if you don't know if it proves your example or not?
Well, I don't remember exactly where the author lived, right? But
was it an American author?
It was not an American author.
Okay.
I think he was British, but I could be wrong.
Okay, he's British, which is the same thing.
Wait, Britain is not America.
It's the same thing because they both belong to the analytic and non-continental schools of thought.
I've read... Well, no, okay. So I've read Baudrillard, for example.
Who?
Baudrillard.
And you didn't understand him, so you dismissed it as meaningless?
No, I think that Baudrillard is meaningless.
Prove it.
What substantive claims that are true do you think Baudrillard made? What true substantive claims did Baudrillard make?
Why don't you read him and find out?
Well, I've read him, and I don't think he makes any substantive
So
claims.
it didn't make sense. So this
tell me.
This is what Anglo-Saxon colonialists did all around the world. They didn't get it, therefore they concluded with absolute certainty that there could not possibly be any smidgen of meaning to be found.
I don't take it with absolute certainty.
Okay.
Just, I've read a large amount of continental
I don't care about convincing you.
Tell me.
I don't care to convince you. I don't care to convince you.
Tell me one thing that Baudrillard says that you think is true and meaningful.
No, make me.
Tell me one thing. You can't tell me. Okay, you cannot give me a single conclusion from Baudrillard that is meaningful. The reason is because there isn't one that can be explicated.
Is that really the reason?
Yes.
And you know this with certainty?
Well, I don't know it with certainty.
Do you know it at all?
I hold the view with quite high confidence. I'd give
95%. So is the view that our society is increasingly moving from a society in which people experience the world as having direct phenomenal access to reality to a world in which the simulation of reality is indistinguishable from reality itself? You don't think this is something to think about and is worth maybe entertaining and thinking about a little bit?
Well, I mean, I've thought about it. I don't think it's a particularly deep point. I don't think that
Wait. But we've shifted the goalposts. First you said it's completely meaningless. Then you said you didn't think it was particularly interesting. Your subjective judgment of whether it's interesting or not has nothing to do with whether what he was saying was meaningless. You see the difference?
So my claim is not that there are not meanings to the words that are said. I think much of the time there's.
But guess what? Listen. You know what we call you people?
Let me finish. Okay. So what my claim was that I think that the claims that are made by people like Baudrillard are not backed up by anything beyond assertions and abstractions. And you didn't back up anything you said beyond assertions and abstractions.
Omni, we're not talking about the fucking thing we talked about before because you decided to veer this conversation into a completely different topic multiple times, by the way. First, you wanted to talk about the calculation problem after you got fucking wrecked about liberal world order. Then you shifted and you decided you wanted to talk about continental philosophy and why you think it's not backed up. We'll go one by one. We're going one by one.
I would be absolutely happy to talk about the calculation problem. You didn't give an answer.
Because you fucking changed the topic! You fucking idiot! Second of all,
you're the one who...
Second of all, shut up! Never did Baudrillard make an empirically controversial claim that has to be demonstrated through the institutional scientific method in order for all scientists to respect it and take it seriously. You fucking moron. That's like saying an artist has to pass the test of scientific validity, or a literary artist, in order to engage with reality in some kind of fucking way. Do you think that in the history of humankind, people engaged with on an existential level, the humanity in the world, only at the level of these airtight, certain experimentations which are only relevant in their practical application, at the level of institutions of scale where they cannot afford to make mistakes and fuck up? Have you never considered that? Nobody's saying you have to accept Baudrillard as a dogmatic doctrinaire truth, but he does allow you to see the world from a different perspective and think about things in new ways. Nobody's saying Continental philosophy has to be accepted as some kind of practical dogma in which, your life depends on, if you don't accept this, then that's just as dangerous as if a dam that's holding water from a river breaks and floods a town or something. No one's fucking saying that. You're just misinterpreting what Continental thinkers. Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up and don't speak over me! Omni! Do you think it's rational to speak over me when my voice prevails over yours? So don't fucking do it! You're just making the assertion, you are making the assumption, you're strawmanning Continental philosophers into making claims they never fucking made whatsoever.
Who did I strawman?
When did they make the fucking... First of all, how can you justify the fucking assumption that the only meaningful and real... Shut the fuck up! Do not speak over me! It's fucking pointless! So shut the fuck up! How can you justify the claim that the only meaningful and real engagement with reality we as human beings can make is through the epistemologically empiricist philosophy of science, and that is the only criterion of truth? How can you justify that claim? You never justified that fucking claim. You just assumed it was true, and then said, well, Baudrillard never passed the scientific test of the scientific method. But he's not making a claim about an empirical reality that's somehow controversial or requires experimentation. You fucking idiot.
Look, so I generally want to figure out things that are true, and I don't think that...
What is truth? What is truth? Let's go there. What's truth?
If you corresponding with reality. But if you...
Wait, you have a correspondence theory of truth?
Yeah.
You actually have, in 2021, unironically, a correspondence theory of truth.
I do have.
That's how I know you're a Discord philosopher. So according to you, truth means the correspondence between what's in our head and the outside world. That's truth, according to you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And how do you justify that view of truth in the view that the entire history of humanity's conception of truth contradicted that one? So how do you justify yours?
Their conception of truth, Ben, that contradicts my definition.
Humanity's conception of truth?
Yeah, what has it been if it's not my definition of truth?
It's not the correspondence between what's in...
What is it then? If it's... I don't want to hear what it's not. I want to hear what it is.
It is the disclosure of reality.
Okay, so it's the disclosure. How is that different from my definition?
Because in a novel disclosure of reality, it actually isn't some kind of correspondence between what's already in your fucking head and reality. It is reality's actual disclosure and its recognition by a subject. That is truth. Its subjective articulation and response.
Yeah, that's not different from my definition.
That is truth. Yes, it fucking is.
It absolutely is.
No, it fucking isn't. No, it fucking isn't.
Okay, so it is, right?
No, it's not.
Well, yeah.
They're very different, actually.
You can keep asserting that. But the reason why they're not different is because both of them agree that a thing is true if the thing that you think corresponds to reality. I was not making a claim that...
But it doesn't correspond. It doesn't correspond to reality.
Okay, so then what's its relationship with reality if not correspondence?
It participates in the reality.
What does that mean?
It means it doesn't merely represent reality. It actually participates in that very reality itself.
Okay, so let's say we want to verify if the claim that my wall is yellow is
No,
true.
that's
How
a
do we
strictly empirical claim divorced from.
verify it?
But you're making a
How do we
soulless.
verify it?
You want to interrupt me, little boy? Interrupt me one more fucking time. One more fucking time.
Wait, what?
One more time, interrupt me. The claim of what color your wall is or whatever is a strictly empirical claim that obviously could only be verified by some kind of empirical measurement. But actually, most of human reality is not strict empirical claims divorced from our subjectivity, from what they call our soul. Most human reality is not just empirical claims about the external world. You fucking dumbass.
Okay, so what claims are not divorced? Or sorry, what are examples of claims that you think cannot my correspondence theory of truth can't account for?
I'll tell you one.
Okay.
When an enemy invades your country, let's say in a classical Greek literary setting, just so we can keep it vague enough. Not only are you engaging in virtue by defending your homeland, it's not only you're doing something virtuous, you are confirming something that is true, something that is fundamentally true about being as a whole.
Oh, what would that thing be that you're confirming about being?
I would have to draw up by some kind of mythical or poetic means to describe its form to you in any given content. But that for human beings is truth.
Well, okay, so then I guess we're using
The problem is that you think like a robot, so you don't get what I'm saying. Right? You're basically the type of person where if your girl goes and fucks other guys, you're just wrong. Well, I can calculate, there's no problem with it. But a man goes, truth means this doesn't happen.
Did you actually?
There is something true. There is something true about defending my pride and my dignity. Not just virtuous, but there is something true. There is something true about it.
Okay, but I don't know what you're talking about.
I know you don't, because you're a mechanical, robotic person who has completely estranged from the world of human reality. So how could I ever make it? How could I ever make it apparent to you? Human beings have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of years describing it through religion, through poetry, through art, through philosophy. Everyone seems to be on the same page about this, except people like you.
Okay, so but I mean, okay, so when you're saying that there's some concept that applies in a broader context, like when we say water is H2O, we have this
more mechanical, empirical claims divorced from fundamental human reality, estranged from fundamental human reality.
Water is H2O is necessarily true, but it's still a discoverable truth. But I don't know what you're saying is true. I take truth to be a product of propositions, not a product of like emotions.
Yeah, because you don't distinguish truth from certainty. That's the issue Heidegger literally pointed out in his one sentence reply to the idiot Carnap.
Pointed out very much.
Yeah, he did point it out. You're mistaking truth for certainty. Truth is not the same thing as certainty.
Wait, why do you think I'm mistaking truth for certainty?
Because propositional truth is axiomatic systemic way of proving consistency, formal consistency. That's a method for determining whether you can be certain about the consistency of any given form.
Well,
but just like how you are a what is it called? You are a
good-looking
correspondence. You have a correspondence theory of truth. Just like how you have a correspondence theory of truth, for you, truth just means the consistency of form. Truth for you has nothing to do with the actual dialectic between content and form. There is no content beyond form for you. Content is form, form is form. A is A.
Well, okay. So, I mean, if you're like, what thing are you saying is true in the case of the person who's like angry about their wife cheating on them? Like, I mean, I just
Because listen,
well, like, no, wait, just answer
because
the
you
question.
vulgarize what I'm
What is
trying
the
to say.
proposition?
You
What is
vulgarize what I'm trying to say.
what
Stop talking over me. When you talk over me, it pisses me off because I can tell in real life you wouldn't talk over me, right? So don't talk over me, little boy.
Well, okay, so, but I just want you to answer the question, which is, what proposition would you be saying is true with the rage that you would experience someone having
When have I made essential the rage? When have I made rage essential? What about the choice to reject it? What about the decision you draw to reject this, for example? And why are you focusing on the example, the bizarre? Why? Because you want to make fun of me and make me look like a ridiculous fucking person? I was being hyperbolic so my dumbass fucking chat can understand. But to make it clear, my example for drawing up arms for war is a better example.
Okay, so in the drawing up arms for war case, what is being said that's true?
Do you think truth only has to take the form of propositions?
Yes.
But you haven't justified that, so why are you asking me that? Because I don't believe that. I don't think truth only has to take the form of propositions.
So then what things can be truth?
I think actions can be true.
Actions can be true. Okay,
I think there can be actions that bear witness to a grasp of a deeper truth. Yes.
Okay, so you would say an action is true.
No, it's not just that the action is true. Your robot brain doesn't allow you to understand this. No, I said an action can evince the person acting as bearing witness to perceiving, having some kind of insight into a more fundamental truth.
Yeah, actions, I agree with you that actions can indicate that we're grasping a deeper truth. But, I mean,
actions evince a relation to truth. Actions evince an insight into truth.
But that deeper truth would have a truth value.
No, it wouldn't, because it's not a fucking computer, so no, it wouldn't.
Well, wait, okay, so what
it cannot have a so-called truth value outside of the action itself, for example. So no, you can't just scalp the truth and say, oh, how do I see? Look, this is the Anglo box. You want to just take everything and put it in a little fucking box so you can poke it and prod it as an outside external a Cartesian cogito observer. But a human being is fundamentally suspended in reality and cannot separate themselves from an object in a fucking little lab cage like you're trying to do with something so fundamental to human experience and human life as truth.
Okay, so okay, so back to the question, which is just if I, like, in ancient Greece, if a person, like, goes out and fights, so would that be
you are so uncultured. But this is my issue. You're such a nerd and Discord philosopher, and you're so uncultured. When I talk about these ancient Greek literature and stuff, you're saying, well, if I went on the magic school bus into ancient Greece, literally went to ancient Greece. I only mentioned ancient Greece because ancient Greek myth and literature bears witness to this.
I was engaging with your example.
No, you're not. So let's not go to ancient Greece, dumbass.
Okay, so where do you want to go?
No, we're not going anywhere. You didn't get the fucking point. You still are taking everything literally. You're actually taking this literally because you are actually a STEM-rotted nerd who has no appreciation of the human soul.
Okay, well, okay.
So Can you describe me a form of art? Can you poetically describe to me something that would be the ground in which truth or something can be suspended?
I can describe a form of art. I don't know what it would mean for truth to be suspended in something else.
Do you know how European philosophers used to describe what art was?
I do.
Art is the phenomenal realization of the metaphysical absolute. So yes, art and truth are related.
Well, I'm an aesthetic. Like, I don't think that there are truths to be known about art and whether something.
Yes, because you don't actually have a conception of truth, only certainty. You conflate truth with certainty.
there are things that
I
think
absolutely conflate truth with certainty. We know. You've demonstrated that.
No, so I don't conflate truth and certainty. There are things that I think are true, but which I don't know with certainty. So, for example, I'm a moral realist. I think that morality is a thing that exists. I think that your economic system would be worse. That's not a thing that I know with certainty, but it's
No, you want to
belief
bounce
that I
back to
hold
the
with
talk
high
about
confidence.
economics after you wanted to pivot to this fucking
Yeah,
conversation
well,
that's
okay,
way out of your depth?
you're the one who pivoted, but
No,
yeah, we
I
can go
didn't.
back to the
I mentioned
calculation problem.
Lacan once. I
We
could have
can,
mentioned Mickey Mouse and anyone else to illustrate the same example, but just because the guy's
okay,
name
we
was
can
Jacques
go back.
Lacan, you decided to make this as a discussion about the difference between continental thinking and analytic brain
No,
rotted bullshit.
I mean, you you initially said that I was about continental philosophy, right? And so
No,
that's how
I
you looked at
did
it.
because you kept pressing me. Just because I mentioned
I'd
Lacan,
be
you refused to. Shut your fucking mouth! Shut up!
You cut me off.
I don't care. I'm in charge, idiot.
Okay, so I would be happy to go back to the calculation problem. Okay.
But we're here, just so we're clear. We got here because, just because I mentioned Jacques Lacan, the real Albert, get in my fucking show queue. The real Albert, get in my fucking show queue, you fucking pussy. You want to talk shit in my chat? Get in my show queue, and if you don't, mods, make sure to ban them. Second of all...
Wait, sorry, were you talking
Shut
to
up.
me?
Nothing to do with you. Second of all, we got to this point because I mentioned Lacan's name, and because I so much as mentioned his name, you refused to engage with what I was actually trying to say because you're that dogmatic.
Okay.
You refused to accept the meaningfulness of what I said.
Okay, so back to the calculation problem.
Yeah,
so
the non-problem. The calculation non-problem.
Well, it is a problem. And
no, it's not a problem.
Studied for decades, and even Marxists admit that it's a problem that they try to work out solutions.
I don't care. So you're going to find a Marxist who admits it's a problem? I don't care. The only problem...
So how do we make it so that there's an incentive for playing on the word, conserving scarce resources if we don't allow the price to go up?
So that you can actually reproduce the given conditions of society's means of production and subsistence?
So that was not an answer to the question.
Oh, I didn't answer your right because you're the Anglo box and you qualify whether something's an actual answer or not, right? You are the judge who decides whether a certain string of words is completely meaningless or maybe trying to make some kind of point, right?
Should I defer to some third party for determining if what you're saying is like a substantive answer to what I'm saying?
Listen, fucker. If I tell you something, don't fucking dare come and tell me that is not an answer. Why don't you just respond to why you disagree?
Well,
because I did answer you. I gave you an answer. At least in my head, it's an answer. So engage with what I just said.
So I asked you to give a mechanism by which your solution...
No, you asked for an incentive, you fucking idiot.
What?
Okay, chat. Please give me the clip where he said incentive. We're going to do this just like last night. Watch my stream. I'm going to show you where you said incentive.
Okay, so...
Chat, give me the clip where he said incentive.
Okay, so I don't think that... How does your system make it so that people will...
No, did I answer you or not?
You did not.
I did not? So what did you ask me?
Okay, so I asked...
You said, what is the incentive? Isn't that what you asked me?
Yeah.
So I told you the incentive is to ensure that society can actually reproduce itself and satisfy the needs of what the people want. And you said that's not an answer. Please explain to me methodically why that's not an answer to the question of what the incentive would be.
Well, okay, so my question was not why society has a broad interest.
So why is that my problem? You told me what is the incentive for preserving scarce resources.
For individual...
You literally fucking asked me what is the incentive for preserving scarce resources.
A bit.
You literally asked me what is the incentive for preserving scarce resources.
So I was talking about it in the context of the people.
So, okay, but you didn't make it clear. You didn't make it clear, did you? You didn't make it clear. So when you're a little disrespectful little fuck, hey, shut up, nerd. Shut your fucking mouth. Nerd, shut your fucking... Dumb fucker, I gotta mute this dumb fuck. He doesn't listen. Let me tell you something, you dumb fucking nerd. No one can hear you, by the way. I'm the Chad here, you're the nerd. I'm the jock, you're the swirly. You understand? I put you in a swirly. Don't fucking talk to me. Disrespecting me, saying I didn't answer you when I fucking answered you. I answered you loud and clear. If you meant something different than what a reasonable person would have expected by your question of what an incentive would be, that's different from me not answering. I did fucking answer you. You just weren't clear enough in your fucking question about what you actually intended to mean. If you intended to mean something else, you should have worded yourself differently. Chat, if someone, and by the way, go watch my stream, because I'm going to show you what you asked me. Chat, look what this guy asked me. He said I didn't answer him. This is what he asked me. Watch this, chat. Watch this. Care? The only problem.
So how do we make it so that there's an incentive for playing on the word, conserving scarce resources if we don't allow the price to go up?
Ad verbatim. How do we ensure that there is an incentive for preserving scarce resources? Something about the price go up. And I answered him. And this disrespectful little shit said I didn't answer him. And when I pressed him on why didn't I answer him, he said, oh, I just meant something different. Don't fucking say I didn't answer you then. Now I'll unmute him. Fucking BTFO'd.
Okay, so so when I was asking about the incentive, in the context that I was asking about what is the incentive for the people who are consuming the resource to conserve the scarce resource. So why, like, let's say that what incentive do I have to not use too much of a resource?
You don't have access to the mechanisms of the planning that would make it decisive as a just and individual consumer. Grabbing something off a shelf is not going to give you the same level of fucking control over how the resources are expended as compared if you were some kind of specialist planner.
Okay, so do top-down central planners get to decide how much of everything people are allowed to have?
No, it can be worked two ways. There can be some kind of feedback loop between them both. That doesn't mean that an individual consumer represents all of society in terms of their individual consumption habits, and that all of society is going to be at stake just in that. Obviously, people would have to, in this hypothetical scenario, make sacrifices, not of their own choice, even. That they're obviously not going to have this unconstrained. Obviously, there are going to be definite constraints to consumption that are going to be felt by people.
Okay, yeah. So if central planners are not deciding how much of stuff to make and are not like deciding what stuff people get, how else are people able to get stuff under your system? They're not allowed to have a system of commodity.
Didn't I literally just tell you that it could work both ways, that central planners can acquire programming or whatever the fuck, the computers will respond to the outputs of production on the basis of both constraints of resources, costs of production, labor, and energy in relationship to consumer patterns of whatever?
Well, okay, no, but I mean that doesn't explain how a consumer gets stuff that were not in the central planner's budget, so to speak.
They wouldn't.
By budget, I mean like
they wouldn't.
Central planner.
How would a consumer get things that are not being produced? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Just like now, if you want something that's not being produced, you don't get it.
Okay, but right now there's a system under which
there's no system.
What?
It's not a system.
Well, right now, if a lot of people want something, then if a person opens up a business selling that, they'll get a lot of people buying their shit.
Okay.
So they'll get a bunch of money.
Okay.
So
there's other ways to measure demand.
So as a result, there's an incentive for businesses to open up.
I get it. You don't even have to finish the sentence. I understand what you're trying to fucking say. You're just not getting you're not getting how I'm trying to respond.
So how do central planners figure out?
Please ask the same question. I literally get your point. You didn't even have to say the point. I'm literally responding to you. They would measure demand through consumer inputs. And you know what consumer input means? It means they're measuring demand based on people, what people want. If they want more of something, then you produce more of it with the cost of production and whatever else constraints to resources in mind.
Okay, so but that would be based on what stuff people are already using. How do we?
But that's how it works now. That's how it works now. You just fucking explained how that's how it works now. If a business owns up and somebody goes and wants their shit, the business has more an incentive. It's only based on what exists now. That's how it works now.
Right now, there's an incentive for a business to open up if there's a potentially prospering area of if there
that's why I told you there's different levels to it, and that when it comes to excesses and surpluses, there's room for arbitrary experimentation of experimenting about what people would prefer and what people would want, using the excesses and surpluses of production over the primary sphere of ensuring the subsistence of society and obviously the things that are necessary to survive. You didn't fucking listen to what I had to say. You just skipped over me, took an Olympic leap, even though I answered your question literally in the beginning of the fucking call.
Well, okay, I listened to what you said, but I didn't think that provides a mechanism by which the
No, I'll explain how it does. Because there are certain things people need. There are certain priorities of production, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room for opening up a new business or experimentation when it comes to those. People need that shit. There's not room for experimentation. It's what they need. This takes precedence in any kind of central plan, right? But because society is wealthy enough to have excesses and surpluses of production, those excesses and surpluses of production can be put to work in such a way that there's room for experimentation, experimental consumer products that can measure demand, and in which some products will be shown to be less needed and others will be shown to be more needed. That's how it works. I think you should just read Paul Cockshott because he fucking describes it. And you know what the fucking hilarious thing is, guys? And chat will literally attest to this. Chat, what are my views on Paul Cockshott? And I was just literally trying to show this guy that there's other perspectives beyond his own box. But what is my position on Paul Cockshott's view of planning and his view of the calculation problem? Chat, just read my chat. They'll tell the truth. So you can't say I'm walking anything back.
I don't have your chat open right now.
Well, have it open.
I can't without Discord disconnecting. It's very strange. I don't know why, but whenever I open up a Discord while I'm also, open up Twitch while I'm also in Discord, disconnect. But what do you want to share with me what your chat's saying? If not, I'll be happy.
I'm actually not a fan of Cockshott, and I think he has his kind of utopian simplification. That's the thing. Okay. But because you wanted to press this so far, which you don't realize, Omni, you wanted to press this. How would you do it? Omni, if you're saying there is a calculation problem, right? The burden of proof is actually upon you to prove why it would be impossible. When you're asking, then how would you? You're shifting the burden of proof. The burden of proof is upon you to demonstrate that it is impossible for a central planner to rationally allocate goods. And your argument is basically, well, I'm just going to assert this, and then I'm going to say, under a market, this is how goods are allocated or whatever, right? This is how they're distributed. So that's how I'm offering something. How would it work under your system? It's a complete circular form of reasoning.
I think we have historical examples of there not being successful solutions. We have a consensus when, in communist countries, they're generally
communist countries, which every economist was able to show were able to industrialize at a faster rate than any market economy.
Well, I'm not.
Do you even know why communist economies underwent crisis? Do you even know anything about that history?
I'm not.
When did communist economies start undergoing problems and crisis that you are pointing out? When was that?
I think a lot of them did at a lot of different times.
When was it?
Wait, for which country?
Every communist state underwent phenomenal, superhuman rates of growth until a certain point.
Wait, okay, so I don't think that's true.
It is true. I mean, it's a fact of history. Yes, it is true.
Wait. Okay, which communist country?
The Soviet Union.
Okay, what was their GDP growth rate?
Like 10% a year or some shit.
Okay,
And by the way, GDP isn't even a measurement of shit, but yeah, like 10 to 12%. There was not even a country on planet Earth that was growing as fast as they were. Not even America was.
Okay, let's see.
Are we loading?
Well, I'm just looking at it. Okay. So, the
You want to check the CIA fact book too, because they literally admit it. They literally admit how fucking scared they were of the USSR's growth. Discord, can someone send him a PDF of what the CIA said about the USSR's growth?
Okay, so I just pulled up an article that looked at the growth rate of the USSR versus the USA.
Yeah.
And that the USA had its GDP grew a lot faster from 1885 to 1990.
From 1885 to 1990 is not what we're talking about. We're talking about 1924 up to the stagnation in the USSR. Your fucking time frame is stupid as shit. You literally took like 10 minutes to go on Google to find a single example that backs you up. Why don't you click the first fucking page?
Was the stagnation? What year was the stagnation?
Do you not know about the? Wait. You're an expert on the Soviet economy. You don't know the year of the Soviet Union stagnation?
No, I haven't claimed to be an expert on the Soviet economy.
But you know enough about it to contest what I was saying. That you don't think it's true.
Well, okay, I have the graph of GDP growth with the USA and the Soviet Union.
Can you please stop using GDP as an indicator to measure a fucking communist state?
What should we use to indicate it?
Literally anything else.
Well, wait, okay. Can you give me something else?
Chat, give him something else. So you do not accept the reality that the Soviet Union grew at a faster rate than any country at the time in which it was growing?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I don't think that's the historical consensus.
Why don't you think that's the historical consensus?
I mean, based on the limited research I've done,
give me an example of why not.
Well, okay, I've looked at what historians have said, and based on the limited research that I've done.
What did they say? Can you give me a fucking example, or are you going to keep fucking give me truisms about the big
other? So according to the economists, Golosov, Guriev, and Savinsky, 2013, they say, quote, "Therefore, our answer to the was Stalin necessary question is a definite no. Even though we do not consider the human tragedy of famine, repression, terror, focus on economic outcomes alone, and even when we make assumptions that are biased in Stalin's favor, his economic policies underperform the counterfactual. We believe Stalin's industrialization should not be used as success story in development economics, and should instead..."
Chat, should I interrupt him? Or should I let him keep going?
It's one more sentence. And should instead be studied as an example of brutal reallocation, resulting in lower productivity and lower social welfare.
Okay, hold on. Chat, clap. Clap for a second. I want everyone in the chat to clap. Okay, so I don't know if you went to sleep and woke up not knowing what debate you were having, but I was actually looking for an example of... I wasn't looking for some random fucker writing about a counterfactual in which he envisions that Stalin's industrialization was not going to be... Shut up! Was not going to be necessary for the USSR's growth. I was actually asking you whether you acknowledged the Soviet Union had the highest rate of growth of any country on planet Earth.
I mean, I don't think... Wait, what data are you using that finds it has
I am literally willing to Google it. I'm literally just saying Google it.
I Googled it, and the Google...
Chat, can you give him the CIA fucking intelligence on the Soviet Union's economy?
Wait, okay, so the CIA...
Do you trust the CIA?
I don't trust the CIA very much.
Why would they be? Why are they pro-Soviet Union? They're biased?
No, Well, no, I trust the CIA. I mean, I would probably trust the CIA there. But the fact that
Yeah.
the CIA was scared beforehand that the Soviets would outperform the US doesn't
The
mean
CIA literally acknowledged that the Soviets' growth rate was superhuman and just not, it was just fucking through the roof.
Do you want to DM me the link?
No, I don't. Because you can
Okay.
literally Google it and you're not Googling it just to piss me off.
Okay. Well, so I've Googled like another indicator. Okay,
Is there anyone in chat? Who's the guy in chat that deals with this shit? Can you DM me something I can give him? You guys are always fucking throwing me links. Well, now's the time for a fucking link.
Okay.
Just something to show. Okay, here we got some graphs. Some guy put it for some reason here. Okay. Can you watch my stream?
No, I can't. Sorry.
Okay. Well, how can I send this to you? I have a graph here.
Just DM it. Just DM to me the link.
You'll be able to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. This one. Do you have, hold on. Rate of growth 1970 to 1928. Okay, here's the US. US. This is meaningless. This is from 89. Okay. Here we go. This is a little picture. It doesn't include the US, but nobody's giving me shit. Here you go. Extraordinary rate of growth right there.
Okay.
Do you acknowledge that is an extraordinary rate of growth?
Wait, this is GDP per head?
Yeah.
Um, I think so, maybe? Wait, okay, so 18. Wait, so which period do you want to analyze?
Are you looking at it?
Yeah, but this is from 1820 to 1990.
Yeah,
You're
well,
talking about
the
it.
USSR is going to be measured at 1928 because the only measurement before 1928 is 1913, which is before the USSR existed.
Okay, um, so over the course of, so from 1928 to 1980, where you want to analyze it?
Can you just take the L and stop wasting time?
Oh, wait, is that the time period under which, I mean, like, what is the, what, okay, so we're looking at the GDP per capita, right? So what was the growth rate in the GDP per capita over that time period?
10%, 10 to 12%.
10 to 12%.
Yeah,
Well,
something
okay.
along that ballpark. 14, some are saying 14%.
Okay, and this is from CIA data?
Can you Google it? Okay, I'll just Google it for you. USSR growth rate in GDP per capita. You want the growth rate?
Yeah.
Growth rate. GDP per capita is not going to tell us the general growth rate.
Well, wait,
Okay,
what
here
are
we go. USSR GDP growth. Let me see if I can get a chart. Can't believe I have to fucking do this. What kind of fucking debate lord streamer has to do this shit by themselves? Here we go. Soviet economy. Great powers. Look at this. By the composite index of national, okay. Annual growth rates in the Soviet Union. Okay, impressive. Okay. Here's Alan. Not available. Because I have a lazy fucking chat. I'm fucking going through this shit by myself.
Yeah, so okay, I mean I have a source. There's an Intel article that says that the Soviet Union did not have fast GDP, that its rate of growth was lower than that of the US, and it was lower than that of other countries
Yeah, well, that's not
that were
true.
recently industrialized.
Which time period are you talking about?
I mean the time period that you were describing.
Can you give me the source?
Yeah.
McConnell also discusses the Soviet and US growth rates separately from the issue of catching up. He states that the annual rate of growth in the Soviet Union is 2 to 3 times as great as that now United States. In 1966, Soviet GNP has been expanding at about 6 or 7% per year as compared to 3 to 3.5% for the United States. This
Well,
is in
yeah,
1966. McConnell also says, yeah, but it was higher before then.
okay,
Starting
so
in 1963, since the annual rate of growth in the Soviet Union is 2 to 3 times as great as now achieved in the United States. Yeah, I already got that one.
Okay, so right after industrialization, countries generally tend to have very high economic growth rates.
Okay, but
Not a
that's
sign
not
of
answering my
sustainable trend.
question. You know why we started talking about this? What I told you that the Soviet Union had the highest rate of growth of any fucking country on earth.
It did not. There are other countries that have had way
Which
higher growth
ones?
rates. Like there was some, I think in like 2014, Iraq had like a 20% growth
I'm
rate.
the Soviet Union around in 2014?
What?
Was the Soviet Union around in 2014?
No.
No. So in the period we're talking about, when the Soviet Union actually existed, before the stagnation, it had grown faster than any fucking country on earth.
No, it didn't grow faster than Japan.
Japan did not start fucking growing until the 70s, which was after the stagnation.
Wait, okay, so you're only talking
At the
about during
rapid
this.
pace, the economic
Wait,
miracles or whatever. Yeah, it grew faster than Japan in the post-war period. Before the stagnation, yes, it did.
well, okay, there were other countries that were growing faster. Spain was growing
No, it
faster.
wasn't. Provide evidence.
It's the Nintel article that I linked you before.
Okay, we're gonna read it. Spain was growing faster. Spain was growing faster. This is what you're saying. So this is an article, by the way, guys. He had to find an article on Nintil. No one's ever fucking heard of that website. To find the one article that's going to support his argument, right? To debunk it, right?
It was the first Google result. Literally the first
Okay.
one.
Okay, sure.
I wasn't.
Spain, GDP. What is GDP PC?
Um. GDP per capita.
Okay, GDP per capita does not actually fucking measure the overall growth of an economy as a whole. You realize that, right?
Well, the growth rate in the GDP per capita does.
The growth rate, the GDP growth. This doesn't actually tell us the rate of growth. There's no rate of growth on this fucking chart.
There is.
No, there
Madison.
isn't. There's no rate of growth.
Data. Look, okay, so are you on the Madison Project data?
Yeah.
Okay, that's literally measuring the rate of growth. The title of the graph is GDP PC growth.
GDP per capita growth.
Yeah.
The left bar, what is that measuring? Are those percentages?
No, wait. No? Okay, so the left bar is not percentages. So the left bar is looking at the amount of money.
Yes,
And
I
so
know.
The graph,
I
graph
know.
chart. So the graph, when it goes from the smaller number to the bigger number, tracks that it is growing.
Okay.
Okay, so so we have that data that finds that other countries had a faster growth rate.
No country had a faster growth rate.
Yeah, you can keep saying that, but according to the data from Cheremukin, Golosov, Gruyev, and Savinsky, they did. Other countries did. And the repeated claims of the Soviet Union over the US that was claimed time and time again ended up being false every time.
And how do you know?
How do I mean, not even the Soviets, because the date when they were allegedly going to overtake the US kept getting pushed back and back, as David Friedman has pointed out.
So how does that debunk that they were lying about their growth rates?
Well, because they claimed that they were going to overtake the US. Every time they were wrong. So that shows that they were not correct about what their growth rate in fact was.
What? Can you repeat that? I'm literally Googling shit because this is a research stream now and I have to fucking find the shit. The USSR was the fastest growing nation in the world since 1924 to the stagnation, excluding World War II. His examples are either during World War II or after stagnation. Link me the source so I could just show it on stream.
I already linked you this.
Not you. Link me the short. Hola soy la patata, please. Link me the source.
Okay, I will have to go in like 10 minutes. But...
No. We're going to finish this debate. You're not going to go in 10 minutes. We're finishing the debate.
Wait, okay.
Oh, unless you concede. Unless you, I get you. So if you leave, you concede in 10 minutes.
I mean, if I have to go, I'd be happy to continue it at some other point.
No, we're going to finish this. Nobody can post links. Okay, DM me, dude. Holas, DM me. This is the same one he gave me. This is the same one he gave me. Where does it say that? Hola soy la patata. Where does it say that? Okay, USSR is the square right here. This square.
Wait, also, what's your explanation?
Then we find that, okay. Then we find, this is the same source you gave me. Then we find that from 1928 to 1970, the USSR was the fastest growing economy except for Japan.
Except for Japan.
It's right here. And even compared to the third world, its performance was remarkable.
Well, okay, but the Soviet Union was also recently industrialized. It's not surprising.
Okay, you're walking it back now. You're fucking walking it back.
No, they were slower than Japan. And in the period that you talked
even
about,
if Japan was the one exception, and by the way, this is too broad. This is too broad because the stagnation began in what, 68? So this is too broad. But even if Japan was the one fucking exception, that's still phenomenal growth rate. And using industrialization, it doesn't listen. You initially began the argument by saying that communist states are an example of the calculation problem. That's how this started. And I told you that communist states, even if it's true that the USSR did not have phenomenal growth rates, which it did, as your own fucking source confirms.
No, my source confirms that in that period, Japan was growing faster, and in later years, the USSR did not grow very fast in comparison to the other.
You're conflating different fucking time and place of the argument, dumbass. We're not talking about after the stagnation. Because we literally don't understand the stagnation and why that even fucking happened.
Okay, why did the stagnation happen? Tell me.
You really want to know?
Yeah, tell me why the stagnation happened.
Well, first we have to eliminate what couldn't have been the reason, which was the calculation problem. Because if the calculation problem is real, it would have always been the problem. But the stagnation didn't start happening until the 70s or the late 60s. So we eliminate, by process, we have to eliminate the calculation problem as the problem.
No.
Yes, we do.
Wait, we can argue about whether the calculation problem.
How could the Soviet Union, how was the Soviet Union able to industrialize its economy, modernize its economy, create a primary sphere of modern industrial production, without, by the way, without global investment, while being the enemy of the West and enemy of the countries that had the highest concentration of capital without being able to take advantage of the capital differentials that China now took advantage of because they became smart and knew how to do it.
Because the Soviet Union
Yeah.
was recently industrialized and had just
Listen. How was it able to industrialize then? How was it able to industrialize? Why didn't the calculation problem prevent its industrialization?
The calculation problem doesn't prevent industrialization.
It doesn't. So the calculation problem doesn't prevent economies from being able to work.
No, it does. It just doesn't.
But the economy did work because the Soviet Union's economy did work. It worked very well.
It didn't work well.
Yes, it did.
There was stagnation after 58 or 68.
It what?
There was stagnation.
Yes, there was a stagnation.
Explain
at a specific historical period.
Okay, why was there the stagnation?
You really want me to explain why?
Yeah.
After the task of actually modernizing the economy was satisfied and completed by the communist states, which they did phenomenally well, modernizing their people, giving them healthcare, giving them education, giving them shelter, giving them food, giving them a more or less modern, well-rounded, acculturated life, giving them those basics of modernity. After that was exhausted, a new era and also a generational shift had occurred in the world. This is what we broadly, some people call it the neoliberal era, some people call it the information revolution, the rise of computers, whatever they want to call it. And also the, the consumer society, where light industry started to take a precedent role in relationship to economies of scale. The previous paradigm of socialism was unable to adapt to this.
How should they have adapted?
I literally just told you about a guy named Paul Cockshott, and according to him...
You said you're not a fan of Paul Cockshott.
I know, but I'm giving you an example of why what you're describing was not the issue. Cockshott believed that the use of computers... So it was actually a proposal within the Soviet Union that was discarded. It was called OGAS. And they were going to start using computers to create plans of production. It was a cybernetics program, yeah. Their cybernetics program to create a kind of internet, to create this.
Okay, so
there was at least at the very least there was other reasons and other possibilities.
Why did that only start kicking in 68?
The stagnation?
Yeah. And why?
Because the source of the Soviet Union's growth, which was modernizing the economy, was fulfilled. They fulfilled the goal.
Were other countries able to adapt?
Other countries
that were not
were under the U.S. Bretton Woods Marshall Plan and could take advantage of the capital differentials allowed through the use of through the use of international.
Okay, so
why do you interrupt me? Why? Through the use of exploiting the capital differentials that allow you to concentrate investments from global financial capital. The USSR didn't have that, so it's a non-starter.
Okay.
Don't talk about how other countries were literally pegged to the U.S. global economic system. So they did it for the same reason the U.S. The U.S. is the one who pioneered this new information age in the fucking first place.
And why, if the U.S.'s model was so failed, why was the U.S. able to be effective?
The U.S.'s model is failed relative to what? When did I say the U.S. model failed? At that time, the U.S. model was not so. There wasn't even a model. There was no model to speak of that to fail or not to fail. No one denies.
You just said the Bretton Woods model.
That's not a model. It was a global system of international finance. Do you not know about it?
I know about the Bretton Woods.
Yeah, no, you don't know shit. Every time you use that tone of voice, I know you don't know shit.
Absolutely.
Just like you absolutely know about truth, right? You don't know shit.
I know a lot of shit about truth.
You know nothing about any of the topics and subject matters we've spoken of. Nothing. You literally know nothing. You literally know fucking nothing.
I know nothing. I think
you literally know nothing about anything.
You think I know nothing about truth?
Yes, I don't think you know anything about truth.
Okay, so that's a pivot, right? That's a pivot back to the other point.
No, you just asked. Why did you ask me the question of truth? You don't know anything
Well,
about.
you just wait. Sorry. So you said that I don't know thing
Because you
about.
used the same tone of
Okay.
voice when you said, I know everything about.
Well,
I know a
okay.
lot about Bretton Woods. You don't know anything about Bretton Woods.
Okay. Well, I would
I know
disagree.
a lot about Bretton Woods. No,
Okay.
you
What
don't.
do we want to take a Bretton Woods quiz? A Bretton Woods quiz.
Yeah. What was Bretton Woods?
Okay, so the Bretton Woods system was a system of international alliances and of trading partnerships between the U.S. and other countries in Europe.
Yeah,
As
I'm
part of
not asking
the
you. I'm not
West.
asking you for the Google definition. I'm asking actually what specifically.
I did not Google it, and I can share my screen and we can
What's
look
what
at it.
specifically was the Brent? What were the details of the Bretton Woods system
My mic.
that
Wait,
allowed countries to
can you
take
still hear me?
advantage?
My
What
mic.
were the details of the Bretton Woods system? The fuck? Did he just fucking bitch out? Did he just fucking bitch out? The fuck? Okay, here, he's still here. Yeah, what were the details of the Bretton Woods system? Go ahead. You know a lot about it, right?
Question?
Yeah, the details of the Bretton Woods system, what was it?
The what about the Bretton Woods system?
The details.
What details do you want?
What was this system?
Well, I mean, I just told you.
No,
what
you
it
gave me a
was.
bunch of vague bullshit. Tell me what it actually
Okay.
was.
So it was a system of trading partners.
How?
Alliance.
What was the system of trading partners and international alliances? What was that? What
It
was the
was
architecture?
it was organized on the lines of the Westphalian system. It was generally between the United States and countries in Europe.
No, because countries in Asia were also part of Bretton Woods. Can you please admit you don't know anything about it?
Well, I know some things about
You
it.
don't know shit about it.
I do know.
You don't know about the fact that, for example, it entailed that the US dollar would become the world's foremost reserve currency. Did you know that? Did you know that it entailed that it was first and foremost a global monetary order to make sure that currency differentials don't lead to conflicts like the world wars before? Did you know that?
That was certainly a part of it.
No, that was the fucking main point of it. The architects of the Bretton Woods system literally said this is why we need this system, to make sure the world wars don't happen again.
Okay. Wait, so what point were we on?
The point that we were on is that the fact that other countries were able to adapt to this new era in no way proves that there is a calculation problem.
Well, wait. Okay, so why was the Soviet Union able to be successful? Like, what if the U.S. system was able to weather the storm as a result of being part of the Bretton Woods system? Why did the Soviet system fail so much? If your system is truly better, your system, which is modeled on the Soviet system.
There's like about 5 things that you just said that make you sound like the biggest dumbass that's ever come in my VC. Did you know that? Let's go through every prong of why you're a fucking idiot. The first prong. Okay. When did I say the Soviet Union? What precedent establishes that the Soviet Union is my system and my model for what every country should have?
You said that your version of communism would be modeled on past successes of communism like the Soviet Union, which is why...
When did I say... Hold on. When did I even say that?
Why?
Why? When did I say that?
Which is why.
When did I say that? Which is why. When did I say that in the first place? I'm catching you, weasel, and I'm asking you when I said that.
Which is why earlier...
No, not which is why. The premise is false. Don't ask why. It is not... I'm muting his dumb fucking bitch ass. Do not fucking establish it as a bridge to say which is why, because I never said it in the first place. Fucking idiot. What I actually said was that you said that the communist states, such as the Soviet Union, are examples of why the calculation problem is real. I rebuked that by saying that the Soviet Union underwent phenomenal rates of growth. That's what we were talking about. He's still talking after he was muted. Unbelievable. No one could hear you, by the way, not even me.
Well, okay. So So you brought it up. You brought up this.
Why did I bring it up?
As an example of success and pointed to their alleged.
I brought it up as an example of success. Why?
Well, in response to my argument that the empirical record backs up the calculation problem.
Exactly. So, how do you get from A, me using the Soviet Union as an example of a successful country that should have been victim to the calculation problem, but clearly wasn't, to B, that it is my so-called model and that I said I'm using states like this. Yes, you did say it was my fucking model, you fucking liar. Literally, Chad, get the Twitch clip. Someone clip. Clip.
So I didn't say that your model was identical, but I said your model was modeled off the Soviet Union.
And where did you get that from?
I mean, like, I've seen other debates that you've had where you've talked about...
What if there is literally evidence on the record that says the contrary is true, where I literally said the Soviet model cannot be replicated, and I've said that many times.
Okay. Well, all right, sure. I'll concede I was wrong.
Good, concede. Good, concede. That's what you need to start doing in order to save what little face you have left.
Okay, so I was wrong about your views.
The second prong of why you're a fucking dumbass
is
that there was there's many prongs to why you were stupid. We're gonna get to all of them.
You still have not. You're running away from
I'm not running away from shit. We're going through the prongs. The second prong.
You're running away from the calculate. So, what is your mechanism of allocating scarce resources?
Shut your fucking bitch ass up. I'm fucking running away when you just fucking made an argument and you're trying to interrupt me when I respond? Shut up!
Okay, so...
The second prong of why you're a fucking idiot is that there was no one, either in the Soviet government or a communist admirer of the Soviet Union, who didn't recognize that the Soviet Union was behind not only America, but the entire Western world. It started out behind from them, and its goal was to catch up. So there's no comparison. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Economic growth in the Soviet Union. Okay.
Why do you interrupt me? Why?
Well,
tell me why you interrupt me in the middle of my fucking sentence.
You interrupted me.
But I run the show and my voice dominates over yours. Why do you interrupt me?
Well, look, my voice...
I am sick of your cock nerd voice interrupting me when I speak. Well, I am sick of your nerd pencil neck cock voice interrupting me when I speak.
I'm sick of your beta male cuck pencil neck voice interrupting me when I speak.
You have a girlfriend? You have a girlfriend?
Do I what?
You have a girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna see who she thinks the beta male is and who's not. Introduce me to her.
Yeah, so I'm obviously not gonna do that. Right?
Okay, because you're a pussy and you're not gonna back up a single fucking thing you say. You keep trying to interrupt me because you know my arguments will destroy you. They will destroy you.
Dude, you're the one who's interrupting me more than I'm interrupting you.
What? You interrupted me literally when I said there was not a single communist in the Soviet government or an admirer of the Soviet Union who didn't understand that the Soviet Union was behind not only America, but the entire Western world, and that it had to catch up. And that therefore, and this is where you interrupted me, you cannot actually compare the Soviet Union as a model compared to the United States, unless you can say that Soviet governments should have adopted American policies within the Soviet Union, and that would have allowed the Soviet Union to be identical to America in its rate of growth. But as we can see, countries which adopted America's policies outside of America have never actually fucking... Hold on. Mods, where the fuck are you? Have never actually fucking been able to replicate America's success despite adopting America's political policies. Even countries like Japan and all these other countries had to adopt heavy-handed, illiberal state planning policies in order to achieve the rates of growth that they could. No country has copied America's policies.
And when Japan...
Look how he still interrupts me. Look how the cuck still interrupts me. You are muted, you dumb fuck. You dumb fuck. No one is hearing a word you say. No one is hearing a word you say. If you want to compare as a system the Soviet Union to America, you have to say that the Soviets should have adopted America's policies and they would have achieved America's record of growth. In the 1990s, he left because he's a fucking pussy, because he lost. That's what it looks like to lose a fucking debate. In the 1990s, the Soviet Union adopted the shock therapy policies. The Soviet Union adopted America's neoliberal-inspired shock therapy policies in the 1990s. American economists and think tanks led the Soviets, the Russians said, fine, we'll be America. And it led to a collapse of their economy so devastating that the mortality rate was comparable to wartime mortality rates. So that will show you and that will attest to comparing both systems.